Hi, welcome to this part of my review featuring Fabula Ultima TTJRPG. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review, featuring this tabletop role-playing game that attempts to bring the Japanese video game RPG experience to your table, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about the optional conflict rules, hit points, and mind points. Any number of these optional conflict rules can be adopted, as long as the entire group agrees on them. You also have the option to use them only during specific conflicts that you think would benefit from an additional tactical layer. You have ambushes and surprise rounds. Normally, initiative already takes care of which characters in a conflict are more aware of their surroundings, and can promptly react to danger. However, if one side gets the jump on their foes, the Game Master may opt to give those characters a free round of actions before anyone else can act. This is known as the surprise round. This optional rule greatly favors the ambushers. A full round of actions is a massive advantage. If you don't like the possibility of a character being defeated before even being able to contribute to the conflict, don't use this rule. If you are using superiority points, a surprise round can become even more dangerous if the ambushers manage to overwhelm their foes with additional actions. We will talk about these superiority points in a few moments. Then we have the players outside of the conflict rule. If one or more players are controlling no characters during a conflict scene, they can still influence its outcome. Once per conflict round, after any character performs a check, a player whose character is not present on the scene can choose a single die rolled in that check and force it to be re-rolled. Multiple players can even work together to have the same die be re-rolled more than once. The goal of this rule is to keep players involved even when their characters are absent from the conflict scene or have been defeated. If you use this optional rule, describe how your character is fighting in spirit alongside their ally and helping them overcome the challenge. I think that this one is not very good when it comes to the thematical explanation. Mechanically, it's good, but I don't think that fighting in spirit is a good way to represent this. It would be much better to have a sort of mini flashback scene when the character that is not present gives some advice or some important knowledge to the character that is fighting in that encounter, and then that character uses that knowledge or inspiration or whatever to overcome the challenge. Then we have the battle superiority optional rule. This adds another layer of strategy to battles and rewards the clever use of elemental attacks and affinities. If you use this rule, all participants in the conflict gain access to a special resource, superiority points. These points are shared by the entire team, which means any superiority points you gain may be spent by you or your allies. Characters can gain superiority points in different ways. For example, whenever they deal damage to one or more enemies, if one or more of those enemies are vulnerable to the damage you deal, your team gains one superiority point. Or whenever you roll a critical success, your team gains one superiority point. And these are just a couple of ways. A character can spend one superiority point to perform an additional action on their turn, making this optional rule quite a dangerous addition. However, there are three important rules governing superiority points. A character may only spend one superiority point per turn, regardless of the number of superiority points available to their team. Whenever your team is about to gain a superiority point, if the opposing team has one or more superiority points, instead you will gain no superiority point, and they will lose one superiority point. A team can never have more than 5 superiority points. Any of these superiority points in excess will simply be wasted. Note that this rule is more advantageous to the player characters than their enemies, since player characters usually do not have damage vulnerabilities. Now let's talk about hit points and mind points. In Fabula Ultima, a character's general well-being is represented by two parameters: hit points and mind points. Hit points are of course abbreviated as HP. This number indicates a character's vital energy, fighting spirit, and general body health, as well as their ability to take a beating and withstand physical pain and fatigue. You should not see hit points as a measure of a character's physical integrity. Losing them does not directly translate into wounds or severe physical harm. One could describe hit points as a shield that protects characters from suffering that final blow that would knock them out of a fight. Bruises, cuts, and burns are all ways to portray this in the game fiction. The moment hit points get to 0, however, is when we see the antagonist's blade find an opening and tear through the hero's armor. So you have information on your current hit points, your maximum hit points. You have information on crisis. This is a number equal to half the character's maximum hit points, rounded down. If your current HP is at or below this number, you are considered in crisis, which means you are not looking good. You're having a bad day and it shows. For instance, a character with 65 maximum hit points will be in crisis if they have 32 hit points or less. Some game effects activate when you enter crisis, and others remain active as long as you are in crisis. If a character's current hit points reach 0, their fighting spirit has broken. They will face different consequences depending on their role in the story: a player character, a villain, or a normal non-player character. Now when it comes to mind points, they are abbreviated as MP. This number measures a character's inner force, magical potential, and ability to focus. In the game, mind points are often spent to fuel magic or to perform heroic feats that verge on the superhuman. You have details on current MP, maximum MP, spending MP, that is, when you need to spend those points for spells or other effects, and when you reach 0 mind points, you are mentally exhausted but suffer no other consequence. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part, we are going to talk about what happens when you reach 0 hit points, depending on whether you are a villain or a hero. I think that some of the optional rules could be considered more like standard rules, such as the ambush rule and perhaps the superiority points rule, but the other rule that allows you to fight in spirit, definitely handle it as a flashback in my opinion, or as something that happened in the past that inspires or gives some sort of edge when the character in question is facing off against a foe. And when it comes to the explanation of hit points and mind points, it's pretty straightforward and very easy to understand. Thank you for watching this part of the review, and thank you for your likes and your comments. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.